Hi, welcome back to Focal Point. Just want to follow up. Brian Fisher is my name. The program is Focal Point, the home of muscular Christianity on conservative talk radio. Brian Fisher is my name. Congenial, convivial, and amiable as always. Just to follow up on that little promotional piece you heard from Jody Brown, I encourage you to go to One News Now as your one-stop shop for news from a Christian perspective. Solid news. You're going to get it filtered just like we do this program. Using the scriptures as our guide, our filter, we screen everything through the Word of God, through the abiding and eternal standards of the Word of God, and that's how we develop our perspective on the news as we bring it to you. So go to One News Now. They've got a perspectives segment there. My columns have begun to appear there on the perspective segment. Got one up here, the one that I talked to you about yesterday. Obama deliberately weakens America by gutting the military. So you can go to One News Now and be able to tap into the commentaries that I right. Now, we were talking before about how, just before the break, President Obama just directed the Office of Personnel Management to do something by fiat to provide taxpayer subsidies for congressmen and their aides for Obamacare. They have no authority whatsoever to do it. And yet President Obama is out there patting himself on the back. He did it. He took charge. He made it happen. Barack the Benevolent out there making sure that Congress gets their taxpayer fund. He has no authority to do that. It's not in the law. And specifically, I mean, the Politico piece says, look, they considered a legislative fix, which is the way you fix that. You got a problem with the law, then you go back and you amend the law. You update the law. It goes through committee. It goes through Congress. You vote on it. It gets signed. And presto changeo, the law is changed to fix whatever problem you found. He said, well, we thought about doing that, but it's just too much work. So we're just going to order it to be done. I mean, ladies and gentlemen, we have a completely, absolutely lawless president. He is Barack the lawless. The law and the Constitution mean absolutely nothing to him. There's no restraint here on what this administration is willing to do. And Ted Cruz, clip number 11, he's onto this, and he's as agitated about as you and I are. Let's listen.
It is really sad to see this administration, this president, this Justice Department so consistently disregarding the Constitution, disregarding the law. And you look at Obamacare. Obamacare, this administration has decided to engage in selective enforcement. It's going to enforce it against some people, not against others, and the administration is not following the law as written. So, for example, just a few weeks ago, President Obama announced that he was going to unilaterally suspend the law for large companies with more than 50 employees. He was going to move the employer mandate until after the next election. Now, Shannon, you know, that has two important concessions in that. Number one, if Obamacare was working, if it were a good thing, President Obama would want it to kick in before the next election, not afterwards. The fact that he is scared about the American people realizing what a disaster Obamacare is and he wants to shift it to after the election, I think is very revealing.
So Ted Cruz, you know, and you think about it, President Obama has waived the mandate for employers. He's waived it. It's gone, doesn't kick in for a year. He just unilaterally, with no authority whatsoever, constitutional or statutorily, he just decided without any authority whatsoever that you and I are going to subsidize health care for congressmen and their aides. But he has not waived the individual mandate. So you and I, if we're buying insurance on the individual market through these exchanges because we don't get it through our employer, and more of those are happening every day. I got some stuff on the economy, the jobs report that'll curl your hair. 77% of all of the new jobs that have been created this year under Obama are part-time jobs. He'll be out there telling you how many jobs he's created. This is wonderful. The jobs are growing. We're getting more jobs every day. 77% of those are part-time jobs. Why? So employers don't have to pay health care, don't have to provide health care, because the cost would cripple them, put them right out of business. So all these people now are getting thrown into this individual market where the individual mandate and all the penalties apply. So President Obama waiving penalties for his fat cat buddies in corporate America. He's giving an exemption and a waiver to his congressional buddies on Capitol Hill, and individuals, the little guy. Now realize who's getting hurt here. It's the little guy that's getting burned. It's the guy that's working 29 hours a week, has family depending upon him, looking for some kind of health care, was getting it to his employer. But now that ObamaCare is kicking in, it's freaking employers out. They know they'll go out of business if they have to provide. So their hours are getting cut to 29. Who is getting hurt? It's the little guy. Congress isn't getting hurt. Congressional aides, they're not getting hurt. Big companies, they're not getting hurt. Who's getting hurt? It's the little guy that has to buy individual insurance on the market. And we're reading stories every day. Ohio, insurance premiums going up 41% on the individual market. In Georgia, it's 198%. Who is getting hurt? It is the little guy. Socialism says it's the friend of the little guy. It crushes the little guy. It absolutely crushes the little guy. Well, let's go to the phones, 888-589-8840. Let's go to Gene in Talladega, Alabama. Gene, welcome. What's on your mind?
Yes, I heard Senator Wicker on your program yesterday defending his decision not to support Senator Lee's letter.
Yes.
Did you find out the straight of things?
I'm sorry, say that again?
Okay, did you find out the straight of things? Wicker was saying that if he did not vote for the continuing resolution, that it would in no way impact the funding for ObamaCare.
Yeah, well, that's a great question, Gene, and I appreciate your call because and this just shows you, ladies and gentlemen, the sacrifices I am willing to make for you, my listening audience. I went and I actually accessed the Congressional Research Service memorandum that was written to Tom Coburn. And this is what Roger Wicker and everybody else is referring to. This is their get-out-of-jail-free card. This is the research report prepared by the CRS, which is supposed to be nonpartisan. This is their get-out-of-jail-free card. This is why they don't have to deal with the issue of voting against the continuing resolution. This is their fig leaf. This is their cover. Don't have to do it because the Congressional Research Service says that you don't have to. You know, my question all along is what kind of funding are we talking about? What kind of funding for Obamacare, for the implementation of Obamacare, would be in this continuing resolution? Are we actually talking about some funding that's there? I mean, I had the impression, talking with Senator Wicker yesterday, there's nothing in the continuing resolution that has to do with Obamacare. There's no implementation funding, nothing in here. But I find, reading the Congressional Research Service, let me see if I can find the appropriate numbers here. There's a bunch of song and dance. Let me go through a little bit of this because it's pretty important to understand what is going on here. What the CRS, again, this is supposed to be a nonpartisan group, but they're in the tank for Obama and big government Republicans on this one. And they talk about the potential effects of a funding lapse. That would be if the continuing resolution is not authorized. So there's no appropriations by Congress to spend any money for the federal government. What happens? That is the question. Now, several presidential administrations, they say, have interpreted the nature and scope of restrictions in various ways. In these documents, the administrations have identified specific exceptions. Well, there are no exceptions. Ladies and gentlemen, there are no exceptions. Not a dollar can be spent. Here's what the Constitution says. They finally get around. Where do they cite the Constitution? Let's see. Where do they quote the Constitution? This is interesting how deep into this story you've got to go before you get an actual quotation from the Constitution. I can't even find it here. Where is it? It's Article 1, Section 9. Here it is, second page. You got to go to the bottom of the second page before they even start talking about the Constitution. Listen to this. Article 1, Section 9 of the Constitution. Ladies and gentlemen, I am quoting from the Constitution of the United States. I am not making this up. I'm not inventing it. I'm not paraphrasing. I'm not giving the sense. I'm not giving the meaning. I am quoting to you from the Constitution of the United States, the supreme law of the land. No money shall be drawn from the Treasury, but in consequence of appropriations made by law. How much money? No money shall be drawn from the Treasury, but in consequence of appropriations made by law. So if there's any money in the continuing resolution for the implementation of Obamacare, it can't be spent. if it's not appropriated. If they don't vote for the continuing resolution, there's no authorization to spend money. The only exceptions is if you have a loss of life or a danger to property. Those are the only exceptions. So if you got some kind of emergency situation, then that would make a certain amount of sense. You can say, look, we got troops in harm's way. We don't want them to get shot up. We need to go rescue them. Or you've got people's personal property that may be in danger and we need to get some government services to them. Fine, you understand that. But those are the only exceptions. Otherwise, no money shall be appropriated except as authorized by law. Now, let me get to the dollar amounts that we're talking. I went through this whole thing. It's 11 pages of dreary legalese. But you finally get to about page 6, and they start talking about the money that the Obama administration is requesting for the implementation of ObamaCare. Top of page 6, the Obama administration's fiscal year 2013, that's what we're talking about, fiscal year 2013, projected that all HIRIF funds would be obligated by the end of fiscal year 2012. So they got $1 billion last year for implementation. That's all going to be gone. By the end of September, that's all going to be gone. It's all going to be obligated. That's not there. So if they're going to do implementation, they need more. They have requested more than $1 billion in new discretionary funding for CMS and the IRS to pay for ongoing implementation activities. Congress did not provide any new discretionary funding for ACA implementation in 2013. In other words, there is at least $1 billion in implementation funding in the continuing resolution that cannot be spent by law, by Constitution, unless Congress votes for it. Ted Cruz, Mike Lee, absolutely right. Ruling class Republicans, absolutely wrong. $1 billion at stake. Back after the news.